11 a.m. in the East Coast, 8 a.m. in the West. It's 10 a.m. here in Tuscaloosa as we join you from the Bama Insider studio. This is Bama Factor Daily. I'm Trey Yanity with beat writer Tony Tsoukalas. Tony, happy Friday. How you doing this morning?
Happy Friday, Trey. 10 o'clock. Nice time in the day.
Yeah, it's great to get these morning shows going. And as you guys know, we're going to have content like this coming for the rest of the spring into the summer, having daily shows and, all kinds of other content that we continue to bring to you guys. Tony, this coaching carousel continues. We've been talking about it for a few weeks now, and really since the season ended. Even before that, when we knew Steve Sarkisian was headed out to Texas, but we knew that Nick Saban was going to figure out a way to replenish his coaching staff, pretty quickly and do a good job with it, as he always does. We talked about Bill O'Brien and Doug Marrone last week. Since then, Jay Graham has been brought onto the staff to be the tight ends coach and special teams coordinator. He's a running back, really by true nature. He was a running back in college. He's been a running back coach throughout the country. We're going to get his resume up here in a second, but I wanted to hear your initial take on this hire. Really some positive feedback. I personally love this hire.
From a recruiting standpoint, I think it's an awesome hire. That's the area that I would look at first. It's just, this is such a great recruiter. I mean, he got Cam Akers to come to Florida State. And he got Marcus Lattimore to come to South Carolina. He's just a guy that knows how to recruit. You're right, though, about him being more of a running backs coach. He has coached tight ends briefly at South Carolina, but that's where he's going to be coaching at Alabama. It is interesting that they brought him in to be a tight end / special teams coach because his limited experience at tight ends, especially because Alabama brought in Robert Gillespie from UNC. That's not official yet either, but he's going to be the running backs coach. So, hey, if I'm a running back too, that having that extra help, I'm sure that's an exciting thing with Alabama's stocked running back room. But I like this hire. I like it, from a recruiting standpoint, and I'm confident that Jay Graham will be able to coach the tight ends as well. And he has a lot of experience being a special teams coordinator, which is the second part of his job. So, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of makes that transition, but Nick Saban has a pretty good grip on what he wants from his staff, so you kind of got to trust him on this one.
You do, and you have to trust him in all these decisions. He doesn't miss very often, and I love the hires of Marrone and O'Brien as well. Excuse me. And this Jay Graham hire seems to be another very positive step to getting this coaching staff replenished. Let's get this resume up here, guys, and please hit that like button. Get in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts. Anything you want to talk about, let us know. We're here for it. That's what this show is about, addressing anything you guys want to talk about. It's relaxed. Get in there. Hit us with the like as well, guys. But, you take a look at this resume here, and it started back at his alma mater. He was a grad assistant at Tennessee back in 2005. But, you look at these first few stops, and they were all pretty short-lived. Just 1 year at Chattanooga the next season as the running backs coach there. He would go to San Diego the year after that and only spend half a season there before moving on to UT Martin. He was the running back and special teams coach at both of those stops, and then heads to Miami of Ohio there near Cincinnati, becomes the running back coach there. And then, like you mentioned, I think his best work came in that 2009, 2010 into 11 when he was with the University of South Carolina. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney was the number one player in the country at the time, and still on some boards is the number one prospect that we've ever seen. So for him to keep him in state there, that shows what a recruiter he is. Let's talk about kind of his role here. You mentioned the recruiting aspect. What is he going to provide on the field wise? As he did get started as a tight ends coach there at South Carolina, really got his first taste at being, in charge of the tight ends. How do we see him, take over that group, the special teams as well, and kind of, help coach this team? I think we know kind of what we're going to get recruiting wise.
Well, like we said, he's developed plenty of really elite running backs. So I think, it's hard to know what he'll do at the tight end position just because we haven't really seen him do that. But just looking at his ability to recruit and develop players at the running back position, you'd think that would carry over to the tight end. And obviously, if you look at this resume right here, there's a lot of special teams experience. So we're not really worried about that either. But, I think he'll be able to coach tight ends. Obviously, they wouldn't hire him if he wasn't able to do that. And just his ability to develop players is what I would, look at. If you can do that at one position, a lot of the coaching styles a lot of that comes down to coaching style, and so I think that he'll be able to kind of transition that into the tight end position, which he does have that brief year of experience with. So I think it's a good move. We've seen coaches kind of move to a role that they weren't necessarily familiar or had a lot of experience with, and then still strive to that role. I think, like I said, a lot of it comes down to style. A lot of it comes down to recruiting. So there's more than just matching up. This guy is a tight end guy. I think you can kind of learn your position and coach it really well. So I'm not too worried about that from an Alabama perspective.
Tony, this one's a little bit different than the other hires we've seen. Obviously, Bill O'Brien and Doug Marrone coming from the NFL. Graham's only spent time in college, and he's never been a head coach. We continue to look at this resume. He returned to Tennessee, his alma mater, in 2020 to be the running backs coach there. He returned in 2012 as well to fill the same role. What do you think the strategy was here in this hire? A little bit different than the other ones we've seen so far this offseason.
Well, you can't build a whole staff off of head coaches or off of NFL guys. I think you need that balance in the staff. He's a young coach that, it's kind of like building a team. You can't have all freshmen. You can't have all seniors. You've got to have that mix. I think having a younger guy in there, a guy that knows college, a guy that's an elite recruiter, that's a good mix to go in with the hyper experienced guys that you brought in before. So I think he's going to bring some energy. I think he's going to help balance things out. I think you just want to have different dynamics in the staff so that you reach all aspects of what you're trying to reach. And I think in this case, I think it's a good move. I think I like the kind of, Alabama has some guys that are, elite recruiters. We mentioned Robert Gillespie. He's a good recruiter. Carl Scott's a good recruiter. Obviously Jay Graham's a good recruiter. And then you've got some guys that are also like, maybe they're out of the game from recruiting a little bit, like Bill O'Brien and Doug Marrone, but they have that experience. They've recruited before, and they offer a different aspect to the group. So I kind of like the balance that Alabama's building right now.
I do too. And, like you're talking about, you do need that mix. And we know Jay Graham is going to be a great recruiter. Let's talk about recruiting a little bit more. Does it keep you up at all, at night thinking about how Jeff Banks isn't going to be a part of this program anymore, and some other elite recruiters, Steve Sarkisian? Is the recruiting going to be, we know it's going to be close. You have Nick Saban at the helm, but is it going to be the same as we've seen these past few seasons? Obviously, this 2021 class is maybe one of the best he's ever had.
I tend to lean towards it's going to be the same, just because this happens so much at Alabama. They lose good coordinators. They lose good assistants, and they always manage to replace them. And then that's not just in the sense of on the field. It's also in recruiting as well. I mean, look, I think, Charles Huff, one of the better recruiters Alabama had, he was only here for 2 years, and Alabama was doing pretty well before Charles Huff rolled in. And same with Jeff Banks. I think these guys, they were great, and that they were super elite, and they're going to do well at their respective programs that they're joining now, at Marshall for Huff and Texas for Banks. But I think Alabama's going to do just fine. I mean, they're not losing Nick Saban, and they're bringing in, like we said, other guys that are really big names, really enticing names that I think recruits will like.
Yeah, certainly. This is another great hire for Alabama as we continue to creep closer to this 2021 season. Guys, get in those comments. Let us know your weekend plans. What you got going on? Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. Tony, some big news dropping this week. This one was on schedule. It was the Alabama football schedule dropping in that big time, SEC show they do nowadays. It was really dramatic. I don't know about you. It was kind of frustrating sitting there having to wait over and over again. We knew Miami was gonna be one matchup, but it's just so dramatic nowadays. It's crazy.
Why did they spend all that time on week one when there was like not even any SEC games? Like on the SEC Network thing, I was just sitting there like we're discussing things that A, we already knew, and B, is not even what was advertised, I mean, really? So but no, it was dramatic. It was overly dramatic, like everything has to be these days. But it was fun after we finally got to look at the schedule. There's some things that got switched around. I know that the Mercer game was supposed to be in November. Now it's on week 2. It probably works out better that way, because the schedule that I saw heading before, what was it, Wednesday? it had Mercer and New Mexico State in back-to-back weeks in November, and I was thinking like, how the heck are they going to make that work? So I like the fact that it's kind of reconfigured and you don't have those like that weird 2-week stretch in November. When you break down this schedule, I mean, it's pretty tough at first, Trey. I mean, look, Miami. I mean, obviously you get that break against Mercer, right? But then you've got Miami and then at Florida in the first 3 weeks. Alabama's going to have a new offense. It's going to have to be clicking if they're going to, play in 2 of their bigger games in the first 3 weeks, right?
Oh, yeah, it has to be. And that's the question mark right now. Will Bryce Young be able to take over this offense? And we talked about it a good bit, right when this season ended, because that was the question everybody wanted to know. Will this offense be able to come out and play well enough to hang in there? The defense is going to be excellent, in my opinion. I think the defense is going to lead this team. They have all kinds of leadership now, kids returning, and this class is just unbelievable to think about. So I think the defense will be fine. But you look at this schedule and you wonder, will Alabama's offense be able to hang around with Ole Miss this time? And, Texas A&M is going to be very solid again. You have to go on the road and play this year. But, looking at this as a whole here, which matchups do you think create the biggest challenge for Alabama? Last year, the schedule obviously looked a lot different after it was modified post-COVID and everything else. But, looking at it as a whole, there wasn't too many challenges just on paper other than that Georgia game. Obviously, some other teams, rose and fell and whatever else. But this schedule seems to kind of have the same feel. You look at maybe at Texas A&M there on October 9th, and, you have to go play the Iron Bowl on the road. But other than that, I don't see too many games that I think could really challenge Alabama this season.
I wrote about this on my breakdown on the site this week, so check it out. But that October 2nd game against Ole Miss is like in bright, red blinking lights is a trap game. You look at that. It's somewhat early in the season, but it's right before that Texas A&M game. And I think, that if you talked about it, right, that Texas A&M game, when you look at this schedule, is probably the one that stands out the most. But then you have a tricky team. You got Lane Kiffin, an Ole Miss team that really caused some headaches last year. I don't know. That one's a real big trap game. I don't think Alabama is going to lose that game, especially not in Bryant-Denny. But they've lost games before that I didn't think they were going to lose, and that's the one that I would circle as like, whoa, keep your eye on this one because especially if Texas A&M's doing well, it's easy to overlook. Maybe an Ole Miss, but that could be at your peril because that offense is always rolling under Lane Kiffin.
It is, and they want Alabama worse than anybody else on their schedule, as most teams do around the country. But this team seems to be extra motivated every time they play the Crimson Tide. This past season, it was supposed to be just another game on the schedule. It ended up being a 63-48 final score. So that's what we see in this rivalry series. I wonder how long it's going to take before we stop thinking of this one as a potential trap game. I think those 2 back-to-back Ole Miss wins have kind of created a feeling every time you play the Rebels that they're in this game. They have a chance to win this thing. Let's talk about that opening week matchup. Neutral site there in Atlanta versus Miami. This is an exciting one. We didn't get to see them play USC at the beginning of this season. First non-conference regular season game, since 2019. So this one's going to be a little bit different. It's really early. Obviously this game is months away, but what are your, your first takeaways from seeing this one? We've had some time to talk about it now. But, now that it's finally here, what do you think?
I think it's interesting that, Alabama is going to get to go against a top quarterback in De'Aaron King, a guy that, will be in that early Heisman bunch of players that, could possibly, he'll be mentioned with, pretty somewhat favorable odds early on in the season, I think. So he's going to be one of the top players in college football, at least at the beginning of the season. And it's nice to see that because for a while there, if you remember, Alabama would have a team right after their star quarterback left. If you remember Lamar Jackson, they had Louisville the year after Lamar Jackson. They had Duke the year after Daniel Jones. And then now they have, now they finally face a team with their star quarterback, intact. So Nick Saban's great at openers. I think Alabama's a better team than Miami. I don't think this is necessarily an upset alert, but I mean, it'd be nice to see that star profile in week 1. It's not necessarily something we always see from an Alabama perspective.
Oh, certainly not. And you love seeing these early kind of exciting games. Obviously, Miami isn't what they used to be. And you know, they're probably not even going to be necessarily what they were last year. They have the chance to be if King can come back and look healthy. And, you know, we'll see. But this is a somewhat of a test. And I think this is the game you sit here and you really take an evaluation on Bryce Young. He's had the full offseason to get better. He's had the full offseason to grow, to learn, to kind of adjust. And, you know, you can't judge anything off of one game, but this is going to be the first time Alabama fans get to see Bryce Young for more than, you know, 10 minutes. And he's going to have a chance to prove himself against another Power 5 school. Do you think Bryce Young will be ready by game one of this schedule? Or do you think it's going to take some time still once we get into it a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I actually think Bryce Young's going to be the mobile quarterback we talk about after this game, not the Eric King. It's going to be, I think this is going to be a real coming out party for him. And I've talked about this, you know, I feel like a broken record, but I'll say it again. Look, when you give Bryce Young the offense and tell him that it is his offense, and you know, he has a whole spring to work on things and to, you know, just like kind of like get his feet set and get his confidence right. You know what I'm saying? I think that, like, I think you're going to see a different player. I think, you know, when you saw him before, it was so much, you know, oh, I've got to impress. I've got to make this throw. I've got to hold on to the ball too long. And he's not going to have that. You know, I think there's still going to be stuff that they have to coach out of him, you know, into a maturity factor, but I think you're going to see a much more mature and much more settled. That's what I would say. Settled Bryce Young heading into this season, because it's his offense. There's nothing he has a lot to prove, but he doesn't have someone looking over his shoulder per se. I know Paul Tyson and Jalen Milroe, they're talented players, but this really feels like Bryce Young's offense. And I think it needs to, I think he needs that confidence. And I think once he's able to kind of get that, you're going to see the 5-star talent really show.
Oh, definitely. You know, this kid is the real deal. You and I have both been on this train, Mick included. You know, a lot of people here at our Bama Insider staff were on the Bryce Young train early on. Even coming into this season, we thought it probably maybe should have been his job. Mac proved us wrong very early on there, but I'm with you. I think he's gonna take this offseason to really learn this offense, and I think it kind of plays to an advantage that Bill O'Brien's going to be in his first season here as well. It's really truly Bryce Young's first season here, so they can kind of learn this offense together and figure out some things together. I think that's going to be a big advantage, but we will see. You know, he's still just going to be a sophomore and still trying to learn how to play at this level. And we saw him make some of those freshman mistakes in those games we saw him in. But at the same time, we saw that ceiling and we saw the potential that we've heard about since he decided to flip his commitment to Alabama. Let's zoom out and talk about the SEC as a whole. I'll try to get an SEC schedule up here.
But while you're doing that too, one thing we didn't mention about this schedule is Alabama's playing 3 teams that are coming off of a bye, and no other SEC team has to do that. That's kind of tough, you know. And that's another thing we didn't mention with that Ole Miss game is the Rebels are coming off a bye in that game. I know like that little factoid really kind of ticks off Alabama fans because they always seem to have they always seem to play the teams heading into a bye. But that's another factor in this schedule when you look at it. It's an Ole Miss, the Mississippi State game, and the LSU game. Obviously, Alabama would also have an open week heading into that LSU game, and that also makes that Mississippi State game. You got to think back-to-back weeks, Texas A&M and Mississippi State. If Mississippi State has a bye week, that could be a big game as well.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, while we're on it, I mean, you look at this schedule and, you know, you did a great job there, Tony, of finding ways to make this as difficult as it can be on Alabama. But, you know, you still probably look at this schedule if you're a third party and you think this is just another typical, you know, Alabama schedule that they're just going to run through. Do you think that's the mindset with this schedule? Does this one look, you know, just like another easy SEC schedule for Alabama? I know that sounds weird. Nothing's easy in the SEC, but do you think that this schedule is really, you know, scaring anybody around the country?
Well, like, look, Alabama went undefeated last year, and it was the first time since, you know, 2009 so it doesn't happen every year. For it to happen back-to-back years would be really something. You just have to think that they'll drop one of these games. I mean, it's happened before last year. You know, last year kind of ruined that whole. You used to say that every year. Well, Nick Saban's going to drop at least one. Well, last year he didn't. But you look at the schedule. I mean, there are potential losses, like we've pointed out, and it's so hard to go undefeated. It's also so hard to go undefeated back-to-back years. So I wouldn't be surprised. That game against Auburn at the end, that's always tough. But there's a few of them. I think Alabama's favored in every single game, if that's what you're asking. I think sure, but we've seen in the past that isn't always the case. So I think with the it kind of will depend if they do lose where it falls on the schedule. Obviously, you don't want it to be that last week against Auburn. But we'll see how it goes for Alabama. I like I said, I'd favor them in every single one of these.
Yeah, I would too. And like you said, you look at the schedule, they're probably not going to win every single game. Will that loss come postseason potentially? But there's a good chance they do drop one at some point. There's only so many you can win in a row here. We'll see how it goes. But let's take a look at this 2021 SEC schedule as a whole. I want to start talking about a matchup that just got me really excited. It's week 1, Clemson and Georgia in Charlotte, North Carolina. This Clemson team was obviously just in the college football playoff. A Georgia team that looked like they could have made it this past year and are vying now for a spot in the playoff every season. This game's going to have some huge implications. And, both teams are just getting their season started.
Yeah, when you're looking at top 5 opponents that you always expect to be somewhere in the playoff hunt, I mean, those are 2 of them. I think Clemson and Georgia, that doesn't get much bigger than that when it comes to an opening game. I think both of those teams will have a chance of making the playoff next year, and I think it's a real momentum check for Georgia. I mean, Georgia needs to take that next step, and if they start off with a loss against Clemson, that's a gut punch, and it could definitely be a loss against Clemson. But I also think Georgia might have the firepower to give Clemson a good game. That is probably, in my opinion, the best game of the season when I look through everything, and we're getting it week 1. That's definitely the game I'm the most excited about from all the games that I've seen, even the Alabama games, to be honest with you, because I think that game is going to shape the season at least early so much.
Oh, it definitely will. It definitely will. Guys, get in the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking. Hit that thumbs up button. Thanks for being here this morning, as always. This week 1 presents some really cool matchups. Obviously, that Clemson matchup is probably the best of that week 1 and maybe the best of the season. You look at some other ones, LSU and UCLA playing for the first ever time there in week 1. Obviously, Alabama and Miami is going to be a fun one. Rice and Arkansas, some throwback football there. I like it. And
I used to go to Rice games. I'm from Houston. I used to go to Rice games growing up.
That's right. Yeah, it's really a great football history out there in Rice. It's an awesome tradition they have.
They had like one of the first Super Bowls, and obviously this game's going to be in Arkansas, but one of the first Super Bowls was in Rice's stadium.
Yeah, it's good, and they've remodeled and everything. They're doing big things out there. They're going to travel to Fayetteville to take on the Razorbacks. Louisville and Ole Miss. This is a fun one. Don't really know what we're going to have in Louisville. But Ole Miss is looking to come back and build off of what they had last season. That game's also in Atlanta there on the Monday.
Yeah, on a Monday. Yeah, that's the Labor Day game.
Yeah, that one's, you got everybody's attention on you. The whole country's looking for some football to watch. Early season matchup. It's always fun. You look at week 2 here. Alabama is going to be hosting Mercer. It's the hump game. But, some other schools getting conference play started, Missouri and Kentucky.
UAB Georgia?
Georgia, there we go. Got some love for our boys in Birmingham there. They're going to, make the trip to Athens. That'll be an interesting one. This UAB team just won the conference. So, who knows what could happen there.
I like the Texas, Arkansas, like old Southwest kind of, schedule there. That's not a bad one either.
No, not at all. That used to be the national title game in some years back in the 50s and the 60s. Those two teams were going at it. Some other interesting matchups too here. If you notice, Florida travels to South Florida in week 2 there. There was another one I saw.
South Florida made a lot of those deals. I mean, because isn't Alabama traveling to South Florida, I think, at some point? Like, kudos to South Florida for pulling off those deals and getting big schools to travel there,
I know it. It's a check for Florida, I guess, and a big opportunity for South Florida. So we'll see how that pans out. Texas A&M going to Colorado, an interesting one. In South Carolina, traveling to East Carolina. I like it. I think this will create a lot of fun matchups. I think it, if Colorado were to head to Aggieland there, I don't think they stand much of a chance. But they played some really good football at home this past year. They could give The 12th man, a run for their money there. And South Carolina going to East Carolina. This is a South Carolina team that struggled against East Carolina at home. Just two.
One thing we got to point out too, Trey, is that we didn't have any of this last year. We didn't, it was fun to have the all SEC schedule. You get to see, some more, I think you got a really high level of football this past season, but we didn't have this. We didn't have this out of conference thing. And it's fun to kind of get back to that and to kind of see SEC versus other conferences, especially during this part where it's, Power 5 against Power 5. I don't think any of us are really excited about Alabama versus Mercer. But I do like the non-conference games that are at least somewhat equal, right?
You're not hyped for Alabama Mercer, Tony?
I'm not. I can't.
Yeah, Bears tied. It's going to be a fun one there, week 2. But like you're saying, man, this is just crazy to look at. It's really relieving, if nothing else, to look at this schedule and nothing's official, nothing's concrete. Don't refer back to this clip in August if something crazy were to happen and we weren't able to play these games, but as of right now,
don't even put that voodoo on us.
Yeah, I'm not. We gotta consider everything. But it's looking like this is gonna happen. It's very exciting to see. Let's move it along here. Maybe go to that rivalry week number 12, the one that everybody really gets excited for. I guess it's gonna be week number 13 here on the schedule. Clemson, South Carolina is back. That was the longest running rivalry that ended last season. They weren't able to play that game because of COVID-19. Florida State, Georgia Tech, Missouri, Arkansas. This is the slate, that everybody really wanted to see this past season. I think we missed out on the most. Alabama offense still awesome slate. It is, and I think this season we could really, see some schools that we're not expecting to emerge and make some of these rivalries excellent. I think Arkansas is one of those teams you look at again. They made huge strides last season. I think they do the same this year. And that Missouri team they're playing there in week 13, I think is going to do the same. Yeah,
that could be an interesting matchup. That's always an interesting game too. It's kind of a fun game for my family. I know you guys probably don't care about this, but my wife's side of the family is like half of them went to Missouri and half of them went to Arkansas. So that's like a big game in my family, just because they kind of it means a lot to them. But that's a fun game for me, at least. I think it's going to be a fun game in general. Like you said, two teams that are kind of on the up that maybe people didn't expect a lot out of, but they're. I think that they're kind of making strides.
They definitely are. Bragging rights in the Tsoukalas family there, week 13.
Right.
But yeah, that's our regular season there in the SEC, and you can find all of those on the Alabama football social media. You can find their schedule, the SEC social media as well. This season I think is really going to be interesting to see fans-wise, and we're super far away, but kind of just get your early take on this. What do you think? I guess kind of, the limitations are going to be as we get into this season. Alabama opens up in a neutral site, but when they come home to Mercer, are people going to be able to go and watch their team?
Look, we're talking about, September. I think maybe we might have close to a full. I think, knock on wood, right? But I think it could be pretty close to normal. We'll see, how things turn out. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're kind of maybe putting this a little bit behind us, but it depends on how the vaccine gets rolled out and where we are at that point. But there's a strong chance that we have a regular football season like we used to have back in the day.
The olden days. No, I'm with you. I think it's going to be normal, and it's all speculation, but as things continue to get more normal, sports continue to get more normal as well. Alabama basketball continues to get a little bit more crazy. This team can't lose, Tony. They're 10-0 in the SEC on a 10-game win streak, at least 9-0 in the SEC. Excuse me. Now 14-3 overall. Another win over Kentucky. They just swept the Wildcats for the first time since 88, 89. How can any other team in the country stop this Alabama hoops team right now?
Yeah, they're not, and they're proving that they can. They're proving they can win in different ways. I mean, look, they hit 23 threes against LSU last week, and then turn around. They really haven't shot the ball super well their last two wins. They kind of had their win ugly against Mississippi State and definitely ugly against Kentucky, but they did it. And I think that proves that's a big sign of a winner too. Is it's not just Alabama getting hot and hitting a million threes and just out shooting their opponent. They're playing defense. They're playing scrappy. They're grinding away wins. This Kentucky win, there were times, for the first time in this 10-game winning streak, really, it kind of felt like, oh, wow, Alabama might actually lose this one. And then they just, despite not being able to hit the, anything from the field in the second half, they managed to keep, Kentucky. I think that the farthest Kentucky got ahead is like 2 or 3. And then Alabama kind of turned on the Jets late, got a few defensive stops, and then all of a sudden, bam, that they put the game away. And that's a sign of a good team to me, is just when things aren't going well, you can still kind of get into that next gear and pull out a victory out of nowhere.
You read my mind. I mean, this team is gritty this season. That's what we're watching right now. We've seen talented Alabama teams in the past, and you look at this team. Some of these studs are still part of Avery Johnson's recruiting classes. John Petty, Herb Jones, for example, two of the leaders on this team, weren't brought here by Nate Oates, but they have completely come around to the Nate Oates system and the Nate Oates mentality. And the whole team has done the same. This team is bought in. You can see it, just the energy, how excited they get for each other. That's what I love seeing. Successful teams know how to win together. It's not just about the best players. Kentucky is a prime example of that. That is an unbelievably talented Kentucky team. I think people kind of get the wrong idea this season because they're 4-10 at this point. They started out 1-8. They've looked terrible, but they're still loaded with 5 stars. That's a very talented group. This Alabama team isn't as talented on paper, but they've swept them now and they've dominated them. Won by 31 points combined in both of those games. And they've done the same to a lot of teams in the SEC because they're playing very relaxed basketball, very team-oriented basketball. The mentality is get up as many shots as you can. And I love it. You saw John Petty talk about it. I think it was post-game after that Mississippi State win on Saturday. Everybody wants a piece of Bama right now. Come and get it. This team is comfortable. I think that mindset's going to continue. So we talk about this schedule down the road here a little bit. And let's really just start with Oklahoma. This is the biggest hurdle left on Alabama's schedule, in the regular season at least. What does Alabama need to do to win this game? This is an Oklahoma team that just defeated number 15 Kansas on Saturday. They just beat number 5 Texas this past Tuesday. Does Alabama have what it takes to go in there and get another huge win on the road?
This is a tough one, Trey, because, Alabama, like I said, they had to scrap the last 2 weeks and they're banged up. Look, the only person that's probably out right now is Jordan Bruner, but, James Rojas is coming back from medical condition. Herb Jones they're like sewing limbs together. Alex Reese picked up a knock. And so there's a lot of guys that are just playing. Petty's been having to play hard. So there's a lot of guys that are just kind of probably, feeling it in the morning when they wake up, and I think it'll be interesting to see, like test after test. And now you're going, to Norman for a big time game. Like you said, probably the hardest game, left on Alabama's regular season schedule. It's tough. And we'll see if they can just kind of how rested they are and how ready they are for this game, because Oklahoma's coming off of, they're on a 3-game winning streak of their own, but the last 2 of those games have been knocking off top 10 opponents. So, I mean, imagine if Oklahoma was able to knock off Alabama, that'd be 3 straight top 10 opponents. And geez, you'd see them skyrocket in the rankings as well.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, if they were to pull that off, I think they're talking top 10 at least, maybe even top 5, 3 marquee wins like that. But the opportunity is there for Alabama as well. They get a win here, and you start to talk about potentially being a 1 seed in this NCAA tournament. Right now, they're projected as a 2 seed by Joe Lunardi's bracketology. Some other projections have them in the same area. Number 8 in the coaches poll, number 9 in that AP poll. Let's look down the road now. Do you think this team has what it takes to be a 1 seed? Obviously, it starts with Oklahoma on Saturday, but following that, can they finish up the rest of the SEC?
Yeah, like they're gonna have to go. It's so hard, Look, they're at 9. There's a lot of good teams in front of them, and they're pretty much gonna have to go close to undefeated to get that. I don't necessarily know if, and this is kind of just my personal opinion, but is it better to go in on this hyper streak? Let's say they roll off like 20 straight wins or whatever. Is that better, and then have the pressure of that going into the tournament, or maybe drop in a game somewhere along the way going in as a number 2 seed? I don't necessarily think being a 2 seed. I mean, look, if you would have asked Alabama about that at the beginning of the season, they would have bit your hand off for it. I don't think they really have to worry about being a number 1 seed if that's what, I guess that's what I'm getting at. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And in fact, if they were to drop a game, it might, and not, you never want to lose, but it might recenter them and give them that extra push heading into the tournament anyways. So it's nice to ride this winning streak. I think Alabama's going to try to rack up as many wins as they can. Of course, any team would. But I don't think, chasing that number 1 seed is necessarily that big of a deal for Alabama.
It's not. It's not. And, this team, and Nate Oates especially, Nate Oates has that standard. And I think for him, maybe it is because he's just that kind of guy. And he wants the highest level of excellence, like Coach Nick Saban, for example. But, Nate Oates is going to coach this team, I think, in a different sense. Alabama has never had this in basketball, or it hasn't had it recently, excuse me. They haven't gotten to 9-14 seasons. They haven't, made it to the third round of the NCAA tournament since 2004. So this, this team is special, though. This team is different. I think they could run the rest of the table in the SEC, but like you're saying, Tony, it's not the worst thing in the world if they do drop one of these to maybe a Missouri. You don't want to lose one of these games, to a school that has no business being there, a Vanderbilt or, one of those, Ole Miss, even down the stretch here. But if you lose a game, that's not the worst thing in the world. This is basketball. Alabama fans aren't used to being able to lose a game and still make the postseason, but that's the case here. This team's done pretty much everything it takes to lock up a spot in the tournament. Do you think they have a chip on their shoulder? It seems like that's kind of been the mentality with this team. They get up a lot of shots. They like to play until the very end of the game, regardless of the score. Is that the mindset in the locker room? It seems pretty loose, but at the same time, they seem like they're, kind of mad at the world.
Maybe they felt disrespect. I think now they're starting to get a lot of respect. So we'll see if that changes anything. But really when I look at this team is it's such a fun style of basketball that I think it's real easy to get the players to buy in on some of the hard work aspects of this style because they're having so much fun, because they're able to shoot so many shots. And I think that that's the greatest thing about Nate Oates' style is that, players really buy into it. They want to do it. And then they want to buy in. They want to give out their all and really, commit to it. So I think that it's a great style, a great approach from Nate Oates, and you're really seeing the players just buy into it. I don't necessarily think it's as much of a mental chip on their shoulders or anything like that. I think it's just this is such a great, fun, well put together style of basketball.
It is, and Alabama athletics right now is having a lot of fun all over the board. I wanted to get this picture up real quick to kind of go over all the teams that are ranked right now. They released it yesterday. It's really insane to think about. Alabama finished the season, obviously, they're number 1 in football. They're I can't find the picture right now, number 8 in basketball, number, I believe, 5 in women's swimming and diving. The women's track and field team is also in the top 10. The men's track and field team is in the top 15 right now. Softball is preseason top 10. Baseball is preseason number 25 in the country. Alabama athletics as a whole really couldn't be in any better of a spot right now. And, we can touch on this real quick, kind of throwing this one on you out of the blue here, but Greg Byrne has had some offers, at least rumored to be potentially becoming the next Pac-12 commissioner. Does that have any weight to it? And, how does this affect the program?
I mean, yeah, losing Greg Byrne would be big because, he was the guy that brought in Nate Oates, so he's one of the better athletic directors in college athletics. But it's just the way Alabama is such a well-oiled machine in athletics. I don't think anything can really totally derail them. We've seen Greg do some really big time things, and obviously I think he would be a loss for the program or for the university as a whole. But I think Alabama would then try to turn around and hire the next up and coming guy. And obviously, if you look at it, if Greg Byrne can kind of go from Alabama to being a Pac-12 commissioner, I think that's a pretty good endorsement from for whoever Alabama wants to bring in next, if that was going to be the case.
I think so too. It would be a crucial loss, but I don't necessarily think that's what's going to happen. Wanted to address.
That's all hypothetical,
Yeah, exactly. It's still a lot of hypothetics at this point. But thought we could bring it up here as we continue to roll this Friday morning. We got one segment left. This one's a whole lot of fun. Before we get that going, guys, please hit that thumbs up button. We got 91 in right now. See 91 likes. This last segment is going to be the winners and losers segment. We did this last week. I'd like to do this every week, just kind of picking a winner and the biggest loser from anywhere in the country at any level of sports. Why don't you get us started here, Tony, with your loser? Mine's had a pretty tough week, so I'll let you get yours out of the way.
I'm going to go. So this is a national thing, right? It's not just college.
Any level, not just college, not just Alabama. It could be anybody in the country.
I'm going to go with something that just bothered me to my core. And it is the Packers kicking a field goal down 8 with 2 minutes to play in a conference championship game. My Lord, I hate that decision for so many reasons. I had a discussion with my friend who tried to explain how it somehow it doesn't make any sense. It's so dumb. You still need a touchdown at that point. I feel the conservatism in football sometimes can just be infuriating. Like if it's like 4th and an inch and you go into punt, just have some guts and do it. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're gonna win a conference championship, Trey, you're gonna have to make big plays. And if you don't make that play, well, then you can hang up your hat and say, "Hey, we didn't get it done, guys." But that was just, and I know that's Nate Oates' Green Bay Packers team. I'm sure he's probably right there with me, just shaking his head at that decision. But I couldn't believe that. And congrats to Tom Brady for making it to another Super Bowl. But I just couldn't believe that call. So the Packers, especially their decision making late in that game, that's my big loser for this past week.
That's a great one. And you're sitting there watching that game thinking, okay, they're down by 8 points, so they only need one score. And they have the football pretty close to the other team's goal line here. Yeah. I know it was 4th down, but it's like most of the time when those kinds of calls, those kinds of coaching decisions happen, you can see the thought process both ways. In that one, I really have no idea what was going on there with Mr. LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers, but that's their season. I think Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the better team in that game, at least maybe not this season, but I think they deserve their chance to move on and, go compete for the Super Bowl here against Patrick Mahomes. My biggest loser is also in the NFL. It's going to be the Houston Texans and David Culley specifically. And this is weird because David Culley was named head coach of an NFL team. So I know you're thinking that shouldn't be a biggest loser, but he is, for the simple reason that, he's just inherited this dumpster fire in Houston. The Texans, right when they hire their new head coach, have news break that Deshaun Watson has officially requested a trade. We saw that coming. We had heard those rumors and everything else, but really poor timing for this organization and David Culley. Tough week. Deshaun Watson's headed somewhere. We don't know yet. There's all kinds of offers. I think 15 or 16 teams put in some kind of preliminary offer, if nothing else. So we'll see there. But sorry for my Houston Texans fans. It's been a tough week. Who you got for your winner this one?
I'm going to go back to Alabama and just as long as Alabama is just rolling off Alabama basketball, that is rolling off, wins and extending that winning streak to double digits. I got to go with Alabama basketball. Look, Alabama the last 2 years hasn't had 9 conference wins the whole season. They start the season with 9 conference wins this year. It's really a special time to be an Alabama basketball fan. And so I just enjoy it out there, Alabama basketball fans, because these kind of seasons, they're special. And you're really in the middle of a magical run right now. So really, I would just say, my biggest winner is Alabama basketball and Alabama basketball fans, because it's been an exciting run for that team. And look, it's got another exciting twist to it on Saturday as well.
It does. And it's just been such a fun season because there's that mystery with Alabama basketball. Unlike Alabama football at times, every time they step on the court, you don't know what's going to happen. And this year, they've been winning those games. You say this is once in a however, but I think Nate Oates is setting up a little dynasty here. I like it, though. Alabama basketball. Tony's winner for the week. My winner is going to be Mr. Greg Sankey, commissioner of the SEC. He has a lot of great weeks, and he could be a winner most times. But just for getting this football schedule together for 2021, getting it out there, everybody taking a breath out, and, having that relief of, hey, we're going to have a pretty regular football season this year. Shout out to Greg Sankey. Double shout out for getting this past season going and keeping everybody on track. That's my winner for the week. And that's all the time that we have for this show. Tony, thank you so much for coming on, being my guest for this show, and sharing your thoughts this morning.
Oh, definitely, man. It's always great to be on with you.
Certainly. We're going to be back on our Monday Night Quarterback, as always, with Mick Gillespie and Kyle Henderson as well. And we have all kinds of content out right now. Guys, go to BamaInsider.com, Rivals.com. Hit us up on social media at BamaInsider. Hit that like button one more time before we get out of here as well. You can check out Tony's articles, all kinds of other great work. Andrew Bones' content right now, because this offseason's going on, but that doesn't mean that we're stopping. Kyle's got us to the grindstone here. We're going to finish out the offseason in style as we continue to learn about all kinds of other headlines like Jay Graham and Bill O'Brien and everything else going on. Tony's going to be not in Oklahoma tomorrow. He's going to be following that game, though, and keeping the coverage for you guys. You can check that out on social media as well. And, guys, we're going to be here every single week. I'm going to be hosting this show every Friday. We're going to have a Bama daily Bama Factor, most mornings or evenings and all kinds of other shows as well. But until next time, guys, I'm Trey Yanity for Tony Tsoukalas. Have a great weekend. Roll Tide.